This episode of the Edify Studios podcast is brought to you by Vitrum Glass Group. Let Vitrum Glass Group free you from the limitations of screen printing and turn your next architectural product into a glass canvas. With digital printed ceramic frit, you can design with a variety of opacities, multiple colors, and custom designs. All created by digitally mixing ceramic inks to create a durable, UV-resistant, long-lasting design. Start today with your own custom graphic or choose from one of Vitrum's exclusive ready-to-print designs. To learn more, visit www.vitrum.ca. That's www.vitrum.ca.
Welcome to the Edify Studios podcast, discussing the shift of architectural concepts into actual solutions, disrupting the current status quo, and having a blast the whole time. Here are your hosts, Brad Glauser and Brad Walker.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Edify Studios podcast at AIA.
From the AIA
2019.
We're
Exposition.
having an incredible time so far. We've had some really strong people on, none stronger than our next guest.
That's right. Our next guest, Mr. Mark Dorsey. Sunday.
We're turning your Spokane Arena into a giant mud pit. You'll pay for the whole seat, but you'll only need the
Truckosaur with Mark Dorsey. Sweet.
So it can only go down from here.
Yeah.
Already set the bar low. Let's keep going.
We're way down there. Way down. Why don't you set it up, man?
So we're here with Mark Dorsey, AIA show. I invited him. Man, it's been a couple of years actually in the making since we've actually decided to try to do this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I told him about the podcast last year. So my background, to kind of introduce you guys to the audience with CSI, the Construction Specification Institute, as I've been involved for about 7-8 years now, I think, totally. And for the past year, I've been officially out of his director role, but I served on the National Board of Directors. That's where I got to know Mark. The CEO now of the Institute at national level for CSI. And anyway, served about almost 2.5 years, I guess. Kind of bled a little bit back and forth. Just really got to know his leadership style, understand exactly the direction he wants to take CSI in which it needs to go, I think is the best way to say that. And it's been it's actually been a pretty long journey, I think, that he's been under, and also the Institute's been over to really kind of just turn this thing around. So today we're going to talk a lot about CSI. We're going to talk a lot about AIA and kind of how, I don't know, but also we kind of want to get to know Mark a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sweet. I've never been, by the way, to a monster truck show, so that's a great intro. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I actually went to one this last year with my kids because it was a Saturday. My wife was busy all of a sudden. I looked online and they were like $22, and it was so much fun.
Was it really?
In the most ridiculous way, just to see these loud machines just sort of doing things that my truck doesn't do.
Yeah, everything I know from watching The Simpsons, so that's about as good as it gets.
It's kind of it almost lives up to it entirely.
Yeah.
Except everybody wasn't yellow. Other than that, it was almost like bit for bit.
That's perfect. That's pretty cool.
It was incredible.
Mark's just as special as Ford Truck Month.
No, that's it.
Or Shark Week.
It happens 12 times a year.
Yeah.
So no.
But that's us saying that we know, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's really get to know Mark.
Yeah.
Let's go back in the Wayback Machine.
Let's do it.
Let's go back. This starts not on this coast, but the other coast.
Or does it start on this coast?
No, it starts on a place where people think there is no coast, but actually has the most coastline in the United States.
Is this like the Ozarks or something?
Yeah. So my grandparents moved to Alaska in the 1930s.
The Alaska.
And my grandmother went to school in Seattle at Queen Anne High. And for some reason,
love that P&W.
So
everybody loves all roads going to the P&W.
They do. And actually, my father went to Western Washington University, and then
Bellingham.
He went to a couple of other schools, and he finished up. I came along when they were on the U of O tour sometime. When they had married dorms, by the way. So that's a throwaway back.
There was married dorms.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. You were single or you're in the married dorms, and they were flying DC-3s from SeaTac to Anchorage. I mean,
So this is like the late 90s.
The vomit rocket.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so I grew up in Alaska. My mom actually, so my mom was in construction-related industry. She, in my sordid youth and before there were things like OSHA,
Safety.
Safety. When I was in my teens, one of the things that I did is I worked for a group that manufactured fiberglass, everything from shower stalls to
Safety.
Yeah,
So
safety.
it's
And one of my job
Wow.
was to repackage 55-gallon drums of urethane foam and acetone and that cool stuff with, by the way, my bare hands as a teenager.
Hello.
What could possibly go wrong?
Just everything.
with a ton of training to begin with, probably.
Oh, yeah. Right. Here's how you open
Only
it. Here's
everything can go wrong at that
right.
point.
This thing fills it up.
how you... Right.
Have a good
This
day.
is how this works.
That's right. Yeah, and I did spill. There were some hazmat spills for sure.
Well, I can only imagine.
Yeah, and
Jeez.
she actually sold products that were installed into the Trans-Alaska Pipeline
Oh,
back in the day. So in the summers, I worked in her warehouse that spelled that guy, and then I wound up getting because I
Where
had
was
warehouse
this?
experience.
Where
that was
was-
Anchorage.
That was Anchorage. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Then
Keep
after high school, I wound up working in Woodinville, Washington.
Oh, that is
Woodinville.
that's special to me.
going.
Yeah,
Right over here.
That's my
Right
home.
over here.
That is 10 square miles I call home.
yeah, and it used to be farmland.
It's still technically zoned mostly farmland.
All right.
I believe technically zoned.
Yeah. So I worked for a group called Land Construction.
All right.
And they laid water and sewer lines for housing developments. But because I happen to have some warehouse background, I got to work at the
geez.
construction yard in summer of '79. It was like a Bryan Adams song happening, and it was the hottest summer on record. 69, right? It was the hottest summer on record for Seattle. That's why I learned to get up early.
Those are the worst.
Oh, it was brutal. It was brutal. But next thing
We're in Vegas and we're complaining about heat in,
Yeah.
the,
Well,
in the
we're
Northwest.
inside.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
100 degrees in Woodinville in a summer. That's a hot day.
That is a very hot day.
That's not good.
Yeah.
at
So
all.
that all inspired me to go to college.
So that's a not as linear path as some, but it got you right there.
No, for sure.
Yep.
Pointed you, said, "Hey, college sounds good right now."
Yeah, college sounded really good, and then I had a long sordid career in associations, which I very much enjoyed, and then got the opportunity to work for CSI, and then I moved to Virginia because you go for the job, you stay for the humidity, and that's been awesome.
Because moisture is king.
Right. I'll tell you
Right?
what, I can say this. Our moisturizer bills have gone down considerably since moving from Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
Moisture.
There's a little
So
bit.
you're no longer investing in Carry hand lotion. or
No,
whatever.
yes, I don't need that.
Just
No.
we're bathing in chapstick while you're.
That's what, I actually told
drying
Walker
out.
as we came to Vegas. We were getting an Uber here, and I was just like, hey, I actually remembered my chapstick this time, so I don't have to spend $13 at the casino on a piece of chapstick to basically just kind of keep things.
Yeah.
I don't know. Moving.
Not bad,
Sometimes.
$13. My cup of coffee and a Fiji water cost, what was it? It was $16
Oh, my
this morning. I was super excited about that.
What's with the Fiji water?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the second time it's come up actually.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's that Fiji water.
Yeah.
The Fijians. They got a racket going.
The markup is incredible.
So what the history is really important. I think that gives context to the character that they call Mark Dorsey. So it's I think there was one blog that came out as soon as you were actually brought on to CSI. Is that we can't? There was a reference to Family Guy, I think.
Was there?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, there's a lot of Mark Dorsey references, and there's a lot of Mark Harmon references in Family Guy. But
Yeah.
I can't speak specifically for my.
No, I
And
think
if
that
you're
one-
saying I look like Peter Griffin, I might have to drop this phone and we're going to have to throw down.
Yeah. You should say it. I kind of want to see that
Yeah,
anyway.
you got cameras going, so let's see what happens.
I do.
Let's make this happen. It's just became fight night.
No, I think
in Vegas.
I think the everybody has the persona within it. I think what I've appreciated working with you over the past couple of years is just that it's not necessarily how do I say this is that you're not the Cheesecake Factory where everything's on the menu.
Right.
It's just like all options are there. It's actually like this is what I know and this is the lane that I stay in and this is the direction we're going to head.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I think there's an important factor about that. Rather, it's the food truck mentality rather than the Cheesecake Factory.
Well, put it a little different. That the as an association exec, I mean, that's what I've made my career doing.
Correct.
And
correct.
I had occasion to kind of reflect back on some things. I went, wow, there's some things that I've been involved with that new programs that exist 30 years later, and where associations really live in this really cool space. They do things that the private sector can't or won't do, and they do things that government can't or won't do. And in many cases, they're self-regulatory, and there's a lot of that, or that we support ongoing professional education in particular. So, really what my job is to ensure that your time, energy, and money are well spent as you're trying to either further your career or further your professional network or further your social network. And, around that board table is all the subject matter expertise that we need. Yeah. I know not just enough about the subject to be super dangerous because I don't know what I don't know.
No, but that's wildly important.
Yeah. No, it is.
It's wildly important to know where you sit and to understand that that's where you sit.
And where you
it's an undervalued
and where you don't.
notion. It really is.
It is.
It's wildly undervalued as a this is what I do and this is what I'm great at and this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
Versus I am this guy, I can do it, it's fine. Just I'll dance around it or get there eventually, or I know a guy, I'll get you some information after this. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop you two both right now.
Do it.
I'm going to wind back because we have, of our 20 subscribers.
And they're here too.
They're all
good to see you guys.
They're all family. But not everybody because not everybody's from the exact architectural side. There's contractors, subcontractors, owners, developers. Let's back it up. What is CSI? Besides crime scene investigations.
Ooh, you want to get under some folks' skin. That's all you have to do is make that connection.
That's why I did it immediately.
That's what he does.
Yeah.
If he can get under some folks' skin, that's where he lives. So. No, but yeah, that's a good question. Why don't you? I'd love to hear your answer.
Well, as a former board member, I'd love to hear.
I knew it. I knew it.
You see, he says he's not going to talk technical, but that's just deflection.
Yeah, there you go. So here's my crack at it. One of the things that CSI has that's really great is how it owns the space about how construction information is organized and how that information is communicated in order to improve the delivery of whatever project it is we're working on. And right now we tend to be focused primarily in kind of traditional architecture spaces, but construction management, where contract administration is a particularly big deal. We intersect there. But the work that our members do touches on everything from ownership through the design process. So architects, engineers, the product and the work has to be specified to a certain degree so that it can be conveyed, of course, to contractors and subcontractors, all in a way, by the way, that is going to create a product or a building that is going to be able to be maintained. So all of a sudden facilities management becomes an issue, and then the circle of life continues because all those things circle back to the owner. So one of the great challenges is that has generally been kind of handing off from silo to silo to silo.
Right.
And in particular for someone that was called...
exactly what we talk about.
Right. The spec writer, if you will.
Oh, for sure.
Right. So they get kind of pushed off to the side, but they have the unenviable work of you're a fact checker, you're an editor, you're supposed to interpret the design intent.
You're a legal writer. I mean all that stuff.
Right. All those things. And the thing that is intersecting is technology. So where the big challenge is
where I wanted to go.
As we're talking, I mean, probably the single best definition I heard from a member was, well, what we do is we take your three-dimensional idea, put it into 2 dimensions, words, so that you can create a 3-dimensional object. Well, now we're not doing it that way. What's happening is the 3-dimensional idea is not only being envisioned, but it's being modeled or it's being 3D printed.
Correct.
And I should, if I'm in a virtual reality or augmented reality environment, I might be able to point at that object, look at the characteristics of that object, and in the ideal world, I should not just see the generic representation of that object in the specifications. Right. In the ideal world, I'm looking at the specific product. And if I'm really cooking with gas, then what we're doing is we're doing predictive modeling on how well that product is going to perform so that I can communicate the cost benefit of any product substitution.
Yeah. guy's dangerous.
How am I doing?
He's good. I told you. So apparently he doesn't
dangerously educated.
He apparently doesn't know a lot about technical stuff, but there is some danger over here.
Right.
Oh, yeah. No. Hyper danger.
Yeah.
Hyper danger. No, that's fascinating, specifically on the realm of advancing the technologies as the industry, as the buildings, as everything is becoming smart.
Right.
Smart. This seems to be sticking along with everything else.
Well, and we're only as smart as the data. So that's the real...
Sure.
And that's a place I think that CSI can, as a neutral organization, play well. Because while there are a lot of competing forces in this room, associations are a neutral ground where competitors come together to solve industry-wide issues. And one of them is, well, how do we create a more effective, efficient construction industry? If you read the McKinsey report from a year or two ago, we are one of the most inefficient markets. Even though we're one of the biggest markets, we're also incredibly inefficient.
Incredibly inefficient.
Wildly
no,
inefficient.
for sure.
So then the other demographic issue is we have 4 generations, basically 5 now if you count Gen Z, all working in the same space, and we're all used to different tools. It doesn't mean, by the way, somebody who is baby boomer or older baby boomer is adverse to using technology. You're just not inherently a digital native.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that digital natives understand data and data structures. It just means they know how to use whatever's in front of them. Ask my kids. So bridging...
Ask our kids. Yeah, it's the exact same thing.
Bridging that gap is, I think, an attitudinal challenge, but it's also a functional challenge especially as new generations are coming out of school and saying, look, I'm working with this technology over here. This is how we track information. And yet you want me to work with a Word document or a PDF file because that's the way we've always done it.
Right.
It doesn't make either side wrong, by the way, but it's moving that direction. And so there's a whole generational set of conversations that add an additional challenge to the work, and how to do that without saying you're wrong is really one of the things that we've got to be able to do as CSI.
Yeah.
No, and it actually has a very collaborative discussion when you bring it up that way, Mark. And the collaborative discussion of CSI is traditionally, construction generally, but CSI has been seen as more of a hierarchical place. In that there has been kind of like
in
that
a space
in a space like we've seen a senior spec writer actually determine the different technical ways of communicating stuff inside of an architect firm, and then you have the subset of people that sit below them. And architectural and construction is very hierarchical in general. So when you talk about it as an association is there for competitors to come and figure out problems in a more neutral environment,
safe environment for sure.
I think
trust tree.
Yeah, the trust tree.
Right. It's the circle of there you go.
Safe space.
That space over there.
This space.
The circle of trust.
The empty space near me.
No, it brings a different collaboration. I mean, but that's actually one of the topics I wanted to get into is the generational gaps that you're seeing in communication, because we've obviously been on the manufacturing side. We've seen a lot of the industry struggle and to basically attract talent to see those things work.
Right.
And now, just because of what's been in the past 2008, 9, 10 recession that we've seen, a lot of those kind of vacate the market to then now, are they now returning, or is this new generation of younger millennials coming back, or what's actually happening in your view?
Well, this is a place where kind of the association thing overrides or informs a different discussion for me, because these conversations are happening in all sorts of technical fields, whether it's medical, whether it's engineering. What does diversity and inclusion look like? One of the best questions I heard asked the other day was, look at who you're selling to and tell me how many of the people you're selling to look like you in your booth or you in your firm.
That's exactly what I just said. When we were actually coming to the show, going to come and set up for the podcast, we walked through this majorly long hallway, and I just said, how many people did we actually pass that were our age?
Yeah. Well, or it's I don't even think it's an age thing. And there's
it might not be. Actually.
It's time for the 15th annual. How are we going to get millennials to work with us in the workplace conversation? Because listen, if you're of reproductive age, you're an adult, and millennials are pretty far down along. Now we're talking about Gen Z coming into the workforce. Yes. The issue is, I still think human communication. It's exacerbated by the speed of technology. It makes it easier for stuff to go wrong.
You're right.
And rather than look at, a whole generation and say, well, they behave this way. Well, that's yes, no, maybe. What is going on is you do have a generation entering a workforce that is loaded with school debt, that has a very different set of ideas about the kind of time I'm willing to devote to my employer, because they have been raised by parents, by the way, whose employers showed them not the kind of loyalty that my parents got. When you went to work, you could work for 20 or 30 years. There was a pension that was well managed. I mean, the idea of spending 40 years career in one spot, that's when I hire,
far between anymore.
Right. And I'm happy if I hire somebody and they're going to be with me 3 years, that's a win. Yeah. And I have to, by the way, acknowledge that they're probably participating in the gig economy somehow. Mm-hmm. So they've got to be able to play and have a side hustle. Yeah. Those are all different things. And it's just a matter of being able to walk in the shoes of another human being and say, all right, how is what you're doing going to help enhance what we're doing as an enterprise? How do I remain open to that? And in some cases, as an employer, I have decisions to make about what I will or won't tolerate,
right,
and vice versa. So an example would be,
okay, go ahead.
If you're consuming high amounts of bandwidth, because what you have to have is you have to have workstations that have enterprise class, design tools. Well, that's a reason to come into the office. Yes. But more and more and more, you don't have to do it that way.
Correct.
You measure productivity differently. So we try to be flexible in our workplace as an organization, but I can tell you, every association's facing this.
Really?
Engineering schools are, for sure.
Yeah.
We're talking about, we're seeing pipelines where there are increasing numbers of women in particular coming into firms, and you can see the pipeline, but how is that going to reflect partnership level, senior leadership level? Right. That would have been traditionally male-dominated professions. Public safety, I mean, in terms of diversity and inclusion, we lag public safety by a lot.
Interesting.
As a community. So if we're going to be attractive, as an association,
sure,
you have to be able to see yourself in that association. And if you look monochromatic or monolithic, you are not going to attract those other people.
You just won't.
And your diversity then winds up becoming a business issue. And this is where I think folks get it wrong. It is not
simple
about
payback,
a check mark.
Simple ROI. Yeah, I get
right.
it. Yeah.
Diversity of ideas, diversity of perspectives. The business literature is full of cases where the more diverse your culture, the more ideas you bring to the table, the more profitable you're going to be, the more likelihood you have of success. It is not for its own sake. It is because it's reflective of the community and it enhances what you're trying to do. So from a CSI standpoint, I want to be able to do a couple things. I recognize, for example, good news, bad news is, right?
Okay.
Construction is rocking, right? Has been since the recession.
Good news, bad news.
Right?
Which excites and terrifies everyone at the same moment.
Exactly.
Yes, it does.
So what happens then is if I'm super busy at work and my employer wants every billable moment they can get out of me, when do I have time for professional development, and what are they going to support? Lunchtime, hence the lunch and learn. I don't want to deal with a lunch and learn. By the way, I want to see my kids, right? But so I have to create smaller bits of information so that you can learn at your time and place of need, not because I'm going to require you to come to the same place every month at the same time.
Well, I think it actually begs the question of how is professional development in just a hobby format for that individual? How is he working on some of that? How's he playing guitar? How's he getting introduced to music or any of that kind of stuff?
YouTube?
That's exactly the format that I'm asking about it, because and is this where it goes from a Gen Z standpoint, or?
No, I think what happens when we get into that discussion is we wind up making some false choices.
Okay.
So there was a school of thought that said, well, digital is going to kill magazines. We're still fortunate. We publish the Construction Specifier 12 times a year.
Right.
Yeah.
We still have great numbers. You have to complement with digital. So one
that's the dynamic force you're talking about.
Exactly. Because in places where I've worked before and published, when our magazine dropped, we'd watch our digital traffic go up because we would use them to tease each other.
For sure.
So if I want short form content or video content,
absolutely,
that's in the digital environment, but I can tease that deeper content, and people still like reading pages.
Absolutely.
So
sure.
I can do that on your phone. I can do it on your iPad. I can do it with what comes in your mailbox. The whole idea is to get you engaged in content that's of interest to you. And your tolerance for bad content as a consumer is going to be, you're going to have about the life of a mayfly, not very long at all.
Not long at all.
So how is CSI diversifying that content?
Oh, that I'm glad you asked. So just Thursday.
Wait, did you guys plan that? That seemed very planned.
No, but he wouldn't have known this because just Thursday we relaunched our website.
Oh yeah.
In a very mobile friendly form.
What's the website?
CSIresources.org. Thank you for that.
Resources.
Thank you for that.
Sunday. Thank you. That was
That's
excellent.
right.
And we just launched a new online learning library, which we're beginning to populate with content that you can,
That's aggregated, documented, and then posted.
Not only searchable, but will lead to content that you can watch in order to maintain your continuing education credits. And
Interesting.
One of my aspirations is, listen, if accountants can do this, we can do this. In places like in Ohio,
Aspirations.
Yeah, aspirations. 5, 10, and 15-minute chunks of time can be viewed, and you would take a test of your knowledge, and taking those courses can be credited towards your licensure. So think about that.
Wow.
So if we can do that in that environment,
So it's not just the infotainment,
no, it's not.
right? I mean,
No.
This is a different format of actually of how associations or how CSI is diversifying that for actual applicable licensure.
That's the piece I think that was kind of gone over very quickly, but seems wildly valuable, wildly important, and exactly what is needing to happen is in that license moment.
Right. So we have 20,000 people out there with the CDT, the Construction Documents Technologist credential. We moved that to a certification for a couple of reasons. One is in order for people to keep up with the state of the art or demonstrate that keeping up with the state of the art in the industry. It's not anything more than that. But when you have 3 times the number of people that have that credential as we have members, we have an obligation, I think, from an industry standpoint to say if you're going to go around with the CDT, it should represent also your currency within the industry, because the industry is asking for that.
Well, and I think some of the members have actually asked why the CDD has changed to a continuing education or a continuing certification, and I think it'd be good to just park a couple, 20, 30 seconds on something like that.
Sure.
Well,
the reason is just that is, before I came here, CSI's own leadership wanted to go down that path. They wanted to make sure that when you have the CDT and you're representing that, it has the discipline that says, every few years what we do is we do a job analysis.
Right.
And we understand how the content related to taking the CDT relates to the work being performed. We've been running this program for, dozens of years. So,
Yes.
Over time, the jobs that we're doing are going to change. The technology alone around construction documents has changed.
Very true.
So the idea is, if you're going to have that credential and we're going to stand behind it, and it's a trademark credential and it represents a body of knowledge that you've said you have skill that we have to attest to as an organization. One, I would think that you as the test taker, the person that has that, would want to say, yep, my organization not only stands behind me, but that differentiates me from the person that doesn't have it.
Well, I also think that it actually allows for the CDT to actually be a continuing story and actually have that and have them actually give the value back to the association as well and participate more.
Right.
I mean, it lends itself to exactly what you're saying as far as how content is being diversified in the ways of doing it. Is just participation involves that diversification.
Sure.
So it's very interesting. No,
it's a very robust dynamic community, which is one of the things that the members of CSI through its board of directors have communicated that they want. The highest order of good is we are here to help you realize your full professional potential. That's it. That's the end game.
Right.
The end game is you are a better professional for having intersected with CSI. When I first came on, the challenge we were trying to solve was, but how do we do that at your time and place of need, not our time and place of need? That's the inflection point for a lot of associations.
Well, that's what's currently happening is switching that, I think.
Yep.
So go ahead.
No, that's it right there. That's the headline.
No, No, it's for me. I look at it as in the association world and actually improving. So going back to Edify, and our mission is that we are here to improve both mind and character. That's what Edify Studios means, and I think it's an understanding of how associations are mirroring that improvement. You know what I mean? But you have to be on demand. You have to be in a place where actually that association member or that industry professional can actually like participate in that world, in an on-demand experience.
Well, what makes it really challenging, and this is another trend writ large that we don't often talk about, but there is so much content out there.
Oh man,
whoops.
No.
There is so much
content.
Yeah, there's
just so much content.
Yeah, YouTube, podcasts. I mean, you name it. The number of ways that we as individuals can produce content is mind-boggling. I mean, the statistics about how much content is produced daily compared to the sum of human history is amazing. What associations can do is work with the subject matter experts to vet that content, to separate the wheat from the chaff, so that when you come to us, or you come to AIA, or you go to USGBC, or you go to the general contractors, or ABC, whoever your tribe is, you can then separate, well, this is content that is more likely to help me than my career than just happening to do a random YouTube search because, Brad decided one day he wanted to wake up and, talk windows. Yay. Hey, I can see through them. They're windows.
Thank goodness. And I think there's also a massive differential between how much content exists, how much content has value for us in our nook, how much value that even bleeds out in an outwardly unbiased fashion as well sometimes. And I think there's bias in everything, no matter what. I just don't think that it can be out there. But like the real, in my everyday life, the true heroes that I don't ever get to know and I don't show enough respect to are these people who spend 2 hours YouTubing how to change the battery on their lawnmower, or changing a faucet over, or taking apart their dishwasher. Like, these are the heroes of what we're doing right now, because that's become how we consume information.
Right.
It used to be you'd ask your father-in-law, or the old guy down the road would come over.
I got one for you.
Yeah.
I'm in a Chrysler 300 rental car that I got. It was a nice rental car.
Swag.
It was so much better than the Toyota I was about to be in. Nothing against Toyotas. But, this is a pretty cool car.
Great car, less swag.
You're right. So if you try to find how to release the gas cap on the 300 so that you can put gas in it,
right,
it is not readily apparent at all where that is. And I had to, while sitting at the gas station, go to YouTube to find out where to find it, which, by the way, is in a top secret location underneath, like the driver's side seat.
But your informational
But was something there? Was there a video that showed, because somebody had done... And that's the people I'm talking about, are the people who take that moment
not just one, by the way.
Kidding me?
Not just one.
Oh, no.
Dozens.
Right? But that one very, that is hyper specific. That is a tiny minute. And to think that one person did it, let alone the dozen.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you to all of you who are out there, because I can't tell you how many times it's gotten me out of ridiculous amounts of disaster.
Right.
And I'm just and I'm just like dripping with something, and I'm trying to figure out not how to deliver a calf or something, but but like how to like, for me it was changing the blades on my lawnmower. Like,
right.
And I every time I'd be like, I got it. No,
I got this.
I had to go back to the video like 6 times.
I got this. I don't got it.
I don't have it.
No.
But that content, the fact that it is out there is wildly important. I think the way to push that through the sieve and to create channels and to create networks that you can get that actual factual. I mean, part of the reason that we're doing this, and this is not as CSI related as it should be, but
well, it is today.
It is only today. No, but is we want to get information that we find super relevant that you can't do a YouTube search for and find.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's information that is widely known to many and isn't searchable by most ways of getting this information.
But if it's not now, it will be. I mean,
sure. that's the hope, right?
Right.
And that it's just as good information. I mean, that's the crazy thing, is I've never gone through one of these little YouTube things and had that be completely wrong.
Right.
Right.
Because that's a lot of power.
Right. Well, of course, that when the information overlords take over, as they have, what they'll be doing is they'll actually be searching our verbal content and they'll be, classifying that according to the taxonomy without us even knowing it. We won't be doing keywords around this. No.
So how is CSI actually diversifying that content now?
You mean in terms of delivery or generation?
Both. I would like to talk about CSI resources.org. I think has become a force, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
You've done a good job at basically making sure you can bring a community in. I think one of the biggest things about CSI is chapters have kind of lived within their own worlds, and regions live within their own worlds, and we've always been this kind of island of either whomever's kind of managing it or working through it. But the community of CSI has actually been very helpful. Like when we come to these shows or expos, I know that the CSI members have always been very helpful as far as what's worked for them, how it's worked. But now you're actually bringing together that community through CSI resources to start actually having the platforms to discuss, best practices, and then also, but what's going beyond that right now?
Well, so a lot of websites, we'll just start from their premise. Most websites are still brochureware.
Sure.
For most, and I mean, in the association community, it's a challenge also because we think, 10, 15 years ago, all you needed for a website is you had a webmaster, a term that doesn't exist anymore, by the way, functionally, and you had a database person. Well, now you've got to have rich content. You've got to be able to have video content. You've got to have blog content. You've got to be, your proof of life has to be at least once a week, if not daily. And so we made a conscious decision to organize primarily around communities because it was kind of fashionable to say, we don't need to do those. We won't do that. We'll just let LinkedIn handle that or Facebook handle that. And now all of a sudden what happens is you have to create these 4, 5, 6 different cross-promoting platforms that people may or may not pay attention to. And as we've seen those social platforms evolve, frankly, the one that's still probably the most credible is LinkedIn because people are there for professional development.
True.
But still subject to the same issues of sponsorship and credibility and all those things. So we focus primarily on, is there a dynamic way that isn't the traditional listserv model that people can come together, share content, ask questions to solve problems? And one of the things we actually do consciously is we also post seed questions to the community. We actually asked, I can't remember one we did, I can't remember if it was Halloween or not. We'd actually ask, what's the scariest building you've ever been in? We've asked, which buildings are really cool.
Not necessarily technical, but something that you could answer.
Right. Wait. right. The Towering Inferno. Love that. No. So or how many times it's been remade in how many different ways.
Yeah, I get it.
So the idea is that engages the community with each other, and our focus is helping you solve your workday problem. And
interesting.
Initially, it was the first energy was around things that I'll just lovingly call it things we can do to improve CSI.
Oh, yeah. That can go south or north really quick.
Yeah, but what started to happen is we started seeing more people saying, asking questions. How do I, where do I source information about this spec? Have you come up, how have you developed, dealt with a specific problem?
Sure.
Have you shared content? Now we're cooking with gas. And that number for us, our engagement is going way up.
Is it?
What we will tie that to, all of that content needs to also be referenced in our magazines, and we need guest bloggers. So we've done a couple guest blogs on the impact of technology in the construction space and on specification specifically.
That's a big topic. Yeah.
Greg Seaton's done a couple of those. So over time, you have to develop a content machine that continues to develop information and content that is going to be relevant to the folks in our space.
So from guest bloggers, videos and stuff like that too?
Yeah.
Or how's that
We
working?
haven't quite gotten to the guest video blog yet, but I can see that happening. Because to me, it's really easy to get into, well, what is the medium when all content should actually be promotable or adaptable based on the media. So if I'm going to put out a tweet, I've got to be able to distill that headline down to 140 characters. What is it, 260 now, I think?
260.
Yeah, I still like 140 better.
140 is way better.
Yeah, 140. So I get the 140 characters, but what it does is it conveys a little information and invites you maybe to a 5-paragraph piece on the website, which could link to a longer form article.
Exactly.
Which might also have a corollary video for those that, that's how they want to learn it.
But it's driving you to the community to add the aggregate content.
Yeah, and vice versa. So we're asking the community about what's important to them to help feed content back to CSI. So instead of it being the traditional communication model, which is I'm going to broadcast to you and then, you can take or leave whatever color car we choose to send you.
Sure.
It's actually asking the community to generate content back because it is ultimately their community. It's not the staff's community or the board's community.
Right.
It is the community of AEC professionals that are rallying around this particular common set of problems, just as they might come to architectural issues to AIA or contracting issues, and so on and so forth.
I think that's fascinating because I don't think enough associations take that perspective. I think a lot of associations that we've seen take a slightly different, this is how we do it, so join and be part, because that's the good way.
Right.
Conform.
It's a very conform, but it's we'll set the boundaries, we'll set the rules, and then that's just kind of how it'll be, and you'll love it. Trust me.
Right.
You're going to love it, Mark.
The traditional model is set in kind of the civic societies, so it's the Lions clubs and the Elks clubs, which is you pay your dues and then you get the goodness. And by the way, that works for Costco and it still works. But the number of organizations that have actually taken from the association model to create memberships, I mean, think of every frequent flyer program or loyalty program you've ever seen.
Okay.
Those are right out of the association world.
Interesting.
For sure.
Where we need to be able to go is say, look, we have good content first. And as a member, if you're a super customer, you're going to value that content at a certain level, and you're going to want to join the tribe for other reasons.
Yeah.
But we have an industry to serve, and our members want to serve that industry and their professional needs. And oh, by the way, here's really the kicker, and I think the most important point. If I can't do it on my phone, I'm not even going to.
Just stop talking about it.
It's community first, it's mobile first. Those are our mantras. So that's how we're diversifying. But it is also not throwing away those things that got us here. Specifiers are critically important to CSI.
Very important.
The magazine and that technical detailed content, very important, because that's our credibility, as an organization, but it's also the core of who our members are.
Yeah, it's, for me, I look at it as that CSI has taken a place where you've chosen to evolve. And I think a lot of the associations out there that have just kind of sat inside a hierarchical Kiwanis Club model, has basically, no, this is the way we've always done it, this is the way we're going to do it, this is the way we can do it. It's not necessarily listening to, retrospectively, that's how a lot of the content was actually communicated. It was disseminated through a call tree.
Right.
And it was put through a place of like, hey, you heard from this, so that's what happened.
Well, like everything else, technology flattens the distribution system. That's the hardest part, because that challenges long-standing culture,
right?
And the emotional content of who we are. What's really cool about it, though, is again, it doesn't have to be a sacrifice or a knock.
No,
but the single best thing, if somebody's saying, "What's the value of CSI?" I would say to anybody here, it's super easy to set up a profile, get on the profile, get on CSI Connect, and pose a question to the community and see how fast you get an answer to your problem. That's the root value of what we do, because associations exist not for the sake of having members, not for the sake of making a dollar. They exist for the sake of furthering a profession and a benefit to society. That's why you enjoy a tax-exempt status. Otherwise, what you are is you're a for-profit entity or your government.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that CSI Connect. I think that's actually a good point and good transition.
Huge.
To actually show the accessibility of the community, because through the traditional associations, it hasn't been very accessible from a national standpoint. But now the CSI Connect is actually showing a different way to actually access a global community. So where do they go and find it?
You just go to CSIresources.org, set up a profile, and you're in.
And through CSI Connect is the platform for it.
Right. So what you'll see when you go to the site is, and this has been a big change, is we had separate sites for things like master format, and a different one for OmniClass, and a different one for CSI that was brochureware, and then we had kind of a separate listserv blog, and then you go to the construction specifier. Over time, this has been a big rebuilding effort that
this is my choice. This is the point that I'm making of choose to evolve, but you're bringing and go ahead.
Yeah. So as a board member, you had to say, yeah, we're going to spend money to do that.
Yes,
but it is to unify all of those platforms, so the number of times you have to go around searching for content is reduced dramatically. You're 1 or 2 clicks away from whatever you need. That's a huge challenge.
It's so important, though.
Right.
It's a huge challenge, but do you find that challenge is starting to become less and less? Creating content 5 years ago was arduous and boring and hard, and to get somebody to actually type something out with all of the dramatic... Creating content is actually really easy now, because technology allows it to be easier.
Right. Creating good content, though, much harder.
That wasn't the question, because that is a totally different topic that you're right on. But do you find that you're able to get the content that you're looking for in terms of offering faster?
Yes, because we build more flexibility. No, because there's still less time in the day. So, one thing our members are really good at is if we ask a question, I can get a super long answer really quick, and probably a very well thought out one. But it was either Jefferson or Twain that did the I'd have written you a shorter letter if I had more time.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. Is it's not. Our challenge then is distilling the content so it's readable on your phone in 5 paragraphs, and they're short paragraphs. And chunking it in a way that it's very consumable very quickly and can move you to the deeper stuff.
Right.
However, the specifier does a great job, the magazine. We take from that, we feed that news in there. There's news from the community all over the place. And we are starting to get now more members who are willing to step up and say, I'm up for writing a little blog piece over here for the site. And so sooner or later, that's that energy will continue to build, and I think that's been really important, because
I agree.
Go back to one of my earlier points. If you can't see yourself in the association, or the other old joke is, the speech is always much more interesting when your name is the one being spoken, right?
For sure.
Pay a lot more attention. So
perk up a little bit.
Right. Get our members to showcase themselves, and we invite that. We want members to participate and non-members to participate, to talk about their challenges in the industry,
to create the cross-pollination between it. And so if you were to talk to those, I think one of the biggest struggles for CSI over the past has been 8 to 9 years is from a membership standpoint, understanding the validity and the importance of actually becoming and participating as a member. And the invitation now is to do so in a very active format. You know what I mean? That's what I'm hearing.
Well, this will probably bake your noodle a bit, but membership is a lagging indicator of success. It's a result.
Yeah.
And often organizations say, well, we need to first figure out how to get you to be a member. That's a little bit like saying it's Friday night and I don't have a date, and by Joe, wouldn't it be great if I could get a date right now? What do I need to do? And then when you're desperate and dateless on a Friday, it never ends well.
Okay.
It never ends well. You're at the bar. It never ends well. So what we want is, if we have a vibrant, relevant community first, and we show value being there, and then you have other things that you ask for financial support in order to make more value happen.
Okay.
Well, then all of a sudden you've got a community, you've got a membership base. So if I invite you, to come, Brad, you want to come to a chapter meeting?
No.
Well, that's the thing though, is if I've done it right,
yes,
I actually want you to fear missing out on that chapter meeting, because of
the moment, plural, potentially, that you're not going to. It's that
FOMO.
It's that FOMO, right? I was just going to say it's the FOMO, right?
Yep.
Fear of missing out.
Right.
I need to go because the last one, I would have kicked myself in the face if I would have missed the last one. Right. And I think that's hyper powerful to understand that, to build up those moments, because it's easy to put something out that says, hey, everybody, we're going to get together next Tuesday.
Right.
That's easy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I just did it. Next Tuesday, I'll see you guys.
So I'll give you one. I'll give you a couple of cases.
Yeah.
One of the things we've implemented is a program to help chapters not only promote themselves more effectively, but change the experience when you get there. Because going and listening to the Sage on the Stage lecture. Kill me now.
Oh,
because,
man.
by the way, all of that I can get on YouTube. So
Yeah.
whatever the didactic is from the learning standpoint,
Sure.
that kind of information, read up before your book report, do that. And then you're going to come and we're going to workshop, or we're going to talk about something really cool. So this program that we've done with chapters, like Cook Inlet chapter, in Anchorage, has maybe 20, 25 members.
Okay.
They've been doubling their attendance at events when they get 15 people, and now they've moved that to 30. From our standpoint, 50,
That's
double
huge.
attendance, that's good.
Big. Yeah.
We've seen the Detroit chapter increase its membership 25% just within the last 6 months.
Interesting.
They did a piece, Michigan's Going to Pot, to talk about the green industry.
That green.
It was, they not only did such a good job getting people to come. There was a massive snowstorm in Detroit. The venue offered to let them cancel the event ahead of time and credit them, which is very unusual.
Unheard of.
They decided, we're going to go ahead and go for it. They had 60 people signed up. 57 of those showed up,
No
and they had 2
way.
people walk up at the door.
Unbelievable.
And this is in a snowstorm. I'm like, what? So
What a great topic, though. I mean, it's
Huge.
engaging. It's now. It's real. I
Right.
mean, missions going to pot. That's pretty
Yeah.
actually good.
Yeah,
That's really good.
Doing a brewery tour where I can have a beer and maybe I'll also look at the architectural wonder that is this,
so sexy.
yeah.
Oh.
So, and we're just seeing different ways this is coming together. I mean, they're getting more imaginative, and they're getting more imaginative in terms of the experience, because our issue is not attracting members or attracting people to the content. That's happening. What we want is the experience to be engaging, memorable, and worth your time.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, asking for an hour out of somebody's day after work is asking for a lot. Asking
Yes.
for 4, impossible.
Impossible.
And when we get into what we're about, well, we need you to do this, you've lost. I have to be able to look at you, Brad, and go, all right, what's in it for you? That's the first thing I got to spend time on.
That's the reason why I ask. I kind of ask for the membership question because it's a results driven thing, but I think that
sure.
the answer to it overall is what you just said is that the value is actually like pre-planning the value and providing the value there, and the membership as a result of that value.
Right. If I have 100,000, and this is my dream, I've got 100,000 AEC professionals from all walks of life actively engaged in our on our website and in our communities and channels. 10% of those will probably be members to help move that along, but then we are focused on mission. And don't get me wrong, we there's an old adage, no margin, no mission.
Okay.
But the thing is the reason people come to associations is to achieve mission, to move your profession forward, to solve those real world problems.
Agreed.
And if you're focused on that, all of those other good things come. So that's one of the shifts for us, I think, as an organization, is we are fiercely committed to that particular idea, making you, creating an environment so that you can realize your full professional potential, whether that's learning, certification, a vibrant community, a vibrant chapter network, however you want to engage with us. It also means we can't be all things to all people, so we have to pick and choose.
Sure.
But
You just can't be.
but if we focus on
You're
those
not the
issues,
Cheesecake Factory.
Right.
That was
No.
my point in the beginning.
right,
Be the food truck.
right,
Be the food truck.
Right.
Focus on what you do the best and do it the best continuously. You don't need 45 pages of food that you do mediocrely. Medrocatlessly.
Perfect. Yeah, that
Nailed
was
it.
better. Yeah.
Nailed it. It's a real word now.
stuck the landing.
No, it's it's important because I think we get there's a lot of CSI members that I'll be sharing this with specifically to provide value, to provide engagement, to provide deeper understanding of the organization and the direction for it. And I think from a value standpoint, I want people to see that there is forethought that's happening, and that there is progression that is working on how it's actually coming through the ranks and actually happening. It does take a while to make it work, but I think the instant gratification that you get on YouTube or your phone or your Google machine is causing it. But I think, just FYI, you guys are doing a pretty bang up job actually getting a lot of this stuff
Thanks.
turned around, because it was heading in a grim direction, and I'm grateful to be a part of that ground, some of that foundation work that was laid. But
The grim part?
you know,
Were you the grim
it was
part?
it was heading in.
And then you got out.
Until I.
Well, we did
a
call it.
leadership
We used to
level.
call him the Reaper for a
Oh,
reason,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's okay.
Hey,
Yeah,
well,
he's good.
thank you. I
Don't
appreciate
fear
it.
the Reaper.
No, and for me, it's I don't know. That's the reason why I kind of go down that path. And for another topic I wanted to kind of dive into, and I know we're kind of extending a little bit of time here, but is the importance of specifications and kind of how it's is CSI actually competing against that design assist process that's in work and the DBIA?
I was told there would be no math.
Yeah, right.
Is there numbers involved here?
No, well, so I mean, there are elements of how the work is performed that I'm not an expert in that, but
no, for sure.
But I guess what I would say is that now that we've kind of gone through some of this rebuilding, and there's no question we've been through a solid couple of years of rebuilding. What I'm turning my attention to with the staff and with the volunteer leadership, we've re-engaged. So a couple things.
Sure.
I would mention there are all sorts of ways to volunteer for CSI now that are available through the website. So we have an online portal. What those volunteer opportunities are. They're actually written like job descriptions and how much time it's going to take, and we can thank you and not fry you. But if you have a topic area you're interested in, there's probably a place.
Where's that found out?
It's at CSIresources.org. It all goes to the same. Oh, sorry,
Excellent.
CSIresources.org.
It's very beautifully said. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So one of the things, though, that I have been engaged in conversation with the board is not what's the future of the specifier look like.
Okay.
What is the future of what does the world of work look like, and how are specs created and maintained? And so what does that process really look like?
I knew you were gonna come up with a different answer to what I was.
Yeah.
Traditionally, is this question is going to be answered. So
Sure.
I appreciate it.
So the idea is, again, if you were to look at our members now, only about 15 to 20% of them actually use the word specifier in their title. And we have some folks who are not happy with that, but we also have technical they'll be called a technical architect.
Sure.
They're an architect. They're an engineer. I mean, engineers live specifications.
It's true.
I heard a really great story of somebody who's kind of on the verge of having a tough time with their job, changed their title to product research specialist, and next thing you know, they double their salary and they've got a career path. We
actually talk a lot about this. That's actually interesting.
Yeah, it is the what's in a name, and I am mindful that there are good reasons for longstanding members to have certain titles, and they need to believe in that. We need to pay attention to the specifier, absolutely. But how a spec is created, how it is implemented, that process is changing. And I'll be the first to admit I don't know enough about that to know that, but I know the people that do.
Well, and that's
there it is.
No,
but that's okay. I think that's important to understand that, because that's not what you need to be focusing on anyway. So as being hyper aware of it and understanding that is the real value that's going to come out of that. I think that when you talk about the spec writer, that is something that is few and far between at a lot of architectural firms. I mean, nowadays.
Right.
And I think there's still, and I know many spec writers out there, so don't email me after this. There's still a concept that a spec writer is 147 years old, lives at least, or works at least 3 floors underground at all times,
right,
has a flickering light above them, and an anger management problem.
So, having worked in learning fields where you deal with editors,
Also not true.
Editors and teachers who are also underappreciated for what they do. Kind of like we used to call them fact checkers, but that doesn't exist anymore in journalism. No. So, you're right that is an underappreciated art.
Cool.
Yet, of those that of the members that I know who are independent spec writers, they have more work than they know what to do with.
It's very true.
And I've talked to...
They're choking with work.
Yeah, and I talked to one who has a firm where she was doing specs and architectural drawings, and she thought that what she was going to do is yard out the specs and keep the drawings for herself, and she flipped that. She yarded out the drawings.
Wow.
Because she had so much spec work. Or another one, another member who has a small team of spec writers. Basically, she's recruiting English majors and teaching them about specs, and they have more work than they know what to do with.
Brilliant.
So,
Brilliant.
It is brilliant.
It's almost, there's a little bit of, I come from a liberal arts background. Don't let word get out because they hear the liberal thing. And no,
Don't worry, only 30 people listen to this.
So, if at the core we're about improving the work product for the entire project team,
Agreed.
right?
Yes.
Then we're facilitating communication and language across the project team
For project delivery.
to
you go.
improve that.
That's the mission.
So it's almost a liberal arts perspective. You have to be a generalist and a specialist at the same time, which is a really hard place for folks to hold space.
And appreciated for none.
Right.
That's the real outlier is they have to be so savvy at everything enough to bundle all of this massive building together in Word format, and nobody appreciates it, and it's not right ever.
And couple that with so I've been over at the Vim AEC booth, and I'm looking at going back to the beginning of our conversation. Yes, but now I'm going to look at that object, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that object in an augmented or virtual reality world, and now I have to look at the spec that is contained within the properties of that object and know if that's right, and know how it's going to, how those pieces are going to fit together.
Yeah.
And man, talk about a challenge. So, or put another way, my daughter is an English major with a master's in education and counseling, and she's a boat captain living in Alaska.
Yeah, right?
Good. She knows how to talk to customers, trust me.
I got caught up on the fact that she's a writer and a counselor.
Yeah.
So she should be a spec writer.
Yeah, there you go.
So, I mean, get right in. She should be a member today.
Yeah, she likes working outdoors, though, so there is that.
Well, with today's technology.
Telecommuting.
Right.
I mean, right from the wheelhouse.
Right from the boat.
Yeah.
Right from the wheelhouse.
Probably one of the coolest firms, though, is Dennis Hall and Hall AEC.
Okay.
He's got a building scientist, a spec writer, engineers, contractors, and architects all in his firm, and they deal with, I love the idea of forensic architecture. So if we're going to go,
I like
I
that.
love
CSI.
that term, too.
Yeah, so he's a pilot, got his pilot license, and guess what? You're using drones in order to go inspect a building or the exterior at heights you can't normally get to. There's some really cool stuff going on out there, and our members are in the thick of
yeah.
it. So that's what I want to see, more of those kinds of stories come out about, well, what are you doing that's cool and interesting? Because to your earlier point, it doesn't have to be that image of I'm sitting there with a green visor on, a cigarette hanging out of my mouth, and I just busted a number 2 pencil.
Brr.
It's not that
Still
kind of
grinding the sharpener.
No.
Just a wall full of binders.
Yeah.
No. Well, man, I can't say thank you enough.
Yeah. This
First
has been,
of all,
this has
thank
been
you, guys.
awesome, man.
You're not done yet, but listen. Thank you so much for being part of this. We're gonna wind this one down, and we're gonna make you be part of the Edify Top 2. So what you're gonna tell us is basically your top 2 favorite things that are relevant either now or in the last couple of weeks to you.
Currently obsessed with
Could be
something that's in your mind.
Could be a Netflix show. Could be a song. Could be something that happened here. Something that's coming out in the future. 2 things.
I'm obsessed with the fact that Westworld is still in 2020 and they've teased an entirely new world. So
I am so grateful you brought up Westworld.
Yeah.
I love that.
Who isn't?
Love that show, right?
Yeah.
Just talk about augmented reality.
Yeah.
Jiminy Christmas. Yes,
Yeah.
that is an inappropriate
Yeah.
teaser.
Absolutely. Well, Game of Thrones is over, so what do you got to do? Is speculate
Nothing.
about the next thing.
Yes.
True.
The thing I'm obsessed with still is there is here at the AIA show. There's like one lane, one aisle that is nothing but augmented virtual reality tools.
Right.
And it's really interesting to see who's hanging there and who's not.
Yeah.
But the number of those solutions that are popping up and the implication that has for our future. And by the way, it's not our future. So,
It's the now.
Right. There's a union out of Chicago, and it's Pipe Fitters Union.
Okay.
And they were just showing how one of their guys was involved in a job training course where they're doing inspections using Microsoft HoloLens on a
yeah.
live site.
Just talked about that.
Right, and we've seen those inspections. Anybody who follows Paul Doherty's stuff, you've already seen this with ThyssenKrupp and inspecting,
Yes.
using Microsoft HoloLens to bring in a specialist via Skype, real time, because I don't really know anything about a motherboard. I know everything else about the repair, but I got to have somebody who's a motherboard specialist look at this thing.
It's the next thing closest to that Matrix plugin.
Oh, it is so darn close. And then
Westworld.
Right. Both of those implications for our world of work are what really keep me up at night, and I'm really obsessed about.
I like
Good.
it. No, it's really
Good.
interesting. It's super important. I love the twists and turns of pop culture back into the spec world.
We're only human.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. No,
well,
it's great.
the good news is none of them involve dragons burning our place to the ground, so I'm happy about that.
No longer.
No longer.
No
That's
longer
right.
a threat. Spoiler alert.
That's right.
If it's a spoiler alert to you now, you haven't been paying attention.
It's true. It's true.
No.
Yeah.
No, well, Mark, we want to thank you sincerely for joining the Edify Studios podcast. We'll post up all of the links in the description to make sure CSI resources.org, CSI Connect, your Instagram or LinkedIn. Do you want to?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You can find me on Instagram, and sorry, you won't find me as much on Instagram. You'll definitely find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Okay.
So, but for CSI, it's at CSI Construction.
Okay.
So that's typically
Excellent.
Outstanding. Sincerely appreciate it. What a great topic. What a great conversation. Thank you so much. And I think that's it for us, right?
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next time at Edify Studios podcast. See you.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Edify Studios podcast with hosts Brad Glauser and Brad Walker. To learn more about Edify Studios, visit www.edify-studios.com. That's www.edify-studios.com.